Oh yeah, this is way worse for your photos. Hey, this episode of Some Gadget Guy is brought to you by viewers like you. A huge thank you to all the people who share content on social media, help us out with those algorithms, and the incredible generosity of my patrons on patreon.com/somegadgetguy. More info on those awesome nerds later in the video. Maybe we just made zooming too easy. The pinch gesture. It's good for looking at photos you've already taken, but when you're using your camera, this action might be causing you some problems. Smartphone cameras don't zoom, for the most part. There have only been a handful of phones that have ever had proper zooming optics. On a standalone camera with a zoom lens, the pieces of glass in the tube actually move around to change the field of view. Well, the cameras built into our phones don't do that. Instead, a phone will have separate sensors and separate lenses, each with a specific field of view. On a lot of premium phones, we now have 3 or sometimes 4 individual cameras for different views. Currently, we're breaking it down with an ultra wide, a normal wide field of view. Maybe there's a medium zoom or some kind of portrait dedicated sensor, and then a longer telephoto for more reach. It's a little like those older mechanical film cameras you might have seen that have those different lenses on some kind of bayonet system. But one, I can just pinch in and out and slide around and zoom, it's totally fluid. Well, yeah, that action is until it isn't. You see, what happens with smartphone zoom is really a trick of editing, more specifically cropping. Going back to when phones only had one camera on the back, this could still zoom, right? Well, what happens is the phone crops the image. This has a 12 megapixel sensor. As you zoom, the camera app cuts away information on the edges of the photo. And then when you take the photo, the app will upscale the resolution back to 12 megapixels so it looks kind of the same as the other photos on your phone. If you only zoom a little, it's not that noticeable, but if you try to zoom to 3 or 4 times zoom, you're cutting away a lot of the pixels on that sensor. Then when the phone tries to upscale that photo back to 12 megapixels, it's going to look like a silly water painting cartoon. So from here, we started putting more cameras on the back of the phone. So big changes in the view could be captured at a higher resolution from a separate sensor. Now when we pinch through, we zoom in between the different camera sensors by cropping until we get to the next sensor. If we start with ultra wide, we can pinch up to about the view from the main sensor, and then the phone switches to the main camera. We keep pinching and the phone will start cropping away information again, cutting away from that main sensor until you get close to the view of the telephoto sensor, and then it switches to the telephoto sensor. It's supposed to feel fluid, but you have these hard transitions where the quality degrades and then it gets really sharp again. It's in those in-between ranges where information is being lost, literally lossy editing. The photos are losing resolution, but the phone is still saving those images as full resolution. It might not seem like a huge deal, but we get comfortable standing in one place and then pinching in and out to get the framing that we want. But if we're on the border between 2 camera sensors, we might be using one sensor at its weakest instead of another sensor at its strongest. Say you slide back just a little from the main camera and you transfer to the ultra wide. Well, the ultra wide is cropping a lot, and that photo will be a bit more distorted, have poorer details. Wouldn't you rather just take a small step back and then use the main camera with its full resolution? The wide camera on most of our phones is usually the best camera in terms of quality, depth of field, and low light performance. It's usually the largest image sensor that we have. But as you pinch from the main camera, you'll eventually get to a point where it's better to move over to a telephoto sensor and get back to the full resolution. You might not be able to just stand in one place. You might need to zoom with your feet a little, but you'll get a higher resolution image with a lens that was designed to emulate the look of a telephoto lens. It might look sharper for things like portraits. Each lens here has a native focal length, a native field of view. That native field of view is where you get all the resolution that sensor has to offer, and you get the best image quality each individual camera can deliver. Instead of pinching, we can also use these little toggles. Sometimes they have letters or zoom numbers or focal lengths. These toggles jump you directly to each individual sensor. Tap the button, go to the ultra wide. Tap this button, jump to the telephoto, and then move a little so that you can perfectly frame your shot. Especially recently, over the last 2 years or so, newer camera sensors have gotten better at crop zooming. And we see all these crazy megapixels, right? 50 megapixels, 108, 200 megapixels. And that's totally not true. They're all technically 12 megapixel sensors, but each big pixel is cut down into smaller and smaller and smaller subpixels. Take a photo from the main auto mode, and what do you get? 12 MP. But these newer sensors can do a little pixel resampling magic to give you a bit more room when you're cropping. It's getting so good that many companies are treating a 2x crop from each sensor as a standalone lens. You might see it as a dedicated toggle in your camera app. So if the main camera is a 1x zoom, there's a 2x zoom that looks really good. That's a 2x crop from that main camera, but with a little resampling magic. And if your phone has a telephoto at a 3x zoom, you can do another 2x crop that'll take you out to a 6x zoom equivalent. Those pixel resampling steps help us fill in the gaps between sensors better, but we can still run into issues. Say our main camera is the 1x, and the telephoto is a 4 or a 5x zoom, well, it's a pretty big jump going from a 2x crop to that 5x zoom sensor. And if you pinch to 4.5x zoom, your photo will probably look blurry and splotchy, so it's better to go all the way to the 5x zoom. You just switch to that telephoto, and then if you need to, you take a step back or forward so that you can reframe. Manufacturers are really trying to make this stuff seamless and foolproof and frictionless. They want everyone to have a good time. But too often, I think people don't really understand what's happening on their phones and why, sometimes you take a photo and it looks really good, and other times you take a photo and it looks kind of garbage. It's a lot less random when you know what tech is in your phone. You can predict the outcome better when you understand how it works. And thank you for coming to my Tech Talk. I love testing audio and photography performance on our little portable pocket computers, and the folks who get to see the results of that testing first are my amazing patrons, the folks over on patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. I greatly appreciate everybody who's out there supporting their favorite YouTube channels, especially if you're sharing across social media. That really helps us out with all the algorithms. But if you have the means, I hope you'll consider joining the community at patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. A huge thank you from the bottom of my heart, as this amazing group of geeks, they're helping to keep the lights on here in the Gadget Lab. Now, you know where you can find me around the rest of the internet at SomeGadgetGuy, basically everywhere, but these days I'm spending a bit more time on the Mastodons. I've really been enjoying the vibe over on old school Flickr. If you care about photography and not just wacky little reel videos, you might want to consider dropping by the Flickrs again, because apparently that's where the photographers hang out now. And I'm spending a lot less time on the Facebooks and the Instagrams, and definitely not on the Twitters, so I will catch you all on the next video.